Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kiran, Manager of Sales at Sybrant Technologies. Let me begin by thanking you for your participation in Sybrant's webinar on Opening New Horizons. Today we are here to discuss the potential of open source programs and proprietary software running in tandem to provide effective IT solutions. Let me take the pleasure of introducing the keynote speaker of the day, Mr. Siddharth Seth, Head of Delivery at Sybrant Technologies. Siddharth has been instrumental in setting up IT services and operating businesses ranging from small and medium enterprises to multinational corporations across Asia and Europe, and has over 13 years of experience in service delivery, project design, implementation, and operations management. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that I will be placing all of you on mute during the course of the webinar. We'll open the floor for 15 minutes for question and answers at the end of the presentation. However, if you do have any questions during the process of the presentation, please feel free to leave text messages on the chat box, which you'll find on the left side of the panel. We will try to discuss as many questions as possible. So now Siddharth will take over the webinar.
Thank you for the introduction, Kiran, and good morning to one and all. We are going to be having the webinar overviews, as the link would have been sent across to all of you. I'm going to be sharing my screen, I believe, and I will be taking you through a couple of scenarios and case studies that we have successfully implemented across an education institute, which basically was kind of trying to, integrate an open source application into an existing proprietary application, and that is something that I would like to talk to you about. But first, let me give you an overview of the discussion, or the reason for this webinar is to kind of talk to you about the power of the open source. We're then going to go about the radical shift, and then the predictions that Gartner kind of has in terms of where the open source platform kind of competes with the proprietary platforms, and why it is so enchanting or exciting when you start playing around with open source tools. We're going to then step into an integration that we have actually done, as I mentioned a moment ago, and that should kind of give you a kind of a scenario, or to give you a heads up as to what the tricky scenario was and how we were able to kind of complete the integration, and probably leaving everyone a bit of tips and tricks so as to not kind of face the same issues or the concerns that we kind of had when we did the implementation. We're then going to talk about the benefits of open source, why somebody would want to choose open source over proprietary platforms, the cost effectiveness, the options that you have in terms of choices that you can make, not just to benefit your finance department, but also benefit your operations and your quality and pretty much every department that you might have in your industry-specific sector. So if you look at the power of open source, like any other application or any other program or any other website, if it has a database that's integrated with it, you're looking at a front end and you're looking at a back end, which essentially is where all your critical data is stored. Now, that could probably be a proprietary database, that could be an open source database, or that could be pretty much anything that kind of holds all your information, which is kind of away from your front end for two reasons. One is you're splitting the load of your application server, and the second thing is kind of ensuring that no one kind of has direct access to your database server, which kind of holds all your critical information. Front end could be pretty much anything that you see on a website. If you go to www.google.com, that's a front end. When you type anything in the search box, that is a front end. But the moment you click on the search button, there are a lot of tasks that kind of happen at the back end, which kind of pulls up those search results that you see on the front end. And that is a tight, seamless integration that we look at when it comes to a front end and a back end server. As you might realize that though you might have access to Google's servers for pulling up search results, you do not have access to Google's code as to how google.com was written or how it kind of runs the search query at the background. This is one of the reasons why we essentially would like to split the front end and the back end. Though it is possible to kind of have everything on the same box or the same server, as we may say, ideal scenarios wouldn't recommend to have that set up. If you look at the presentation technologies, the PHP environments, the database systems, the content management systems, the learning management systems, there are just way too many options that are available to you when you kind of set up your own website or a web application or an application as such, which could probably run on your desktop or on a website. If you look at the presentation technology, you have Ajax. For example, google.com uses Ajax. When you start typing something on the search bar, it kind of tries to predict what you're typing and tries to do the autofill option. That is something that we call Ajax, which is highly effective in terms of real-time searching so as to not waste a lot of time. Now, when you come to PHP Development Technologies or the environment, we're looking at several different frameworks. We're looking at several different options that we have based on the type of the application, the criticality of the application, and the most essential thing is what the application is actually being written for. We have Zen Framework when it comes to enterprise level applications, because the code as such is structured so well and it kind of handles multitasking, it kind of handles multi-threading. We're looking at a robust environment when we're looking at a Zen Framework application. Core PHP by default is a requirement because every other framework kind of fits with the PHP environment. Now, when you look at the database systems, we essentially kind of probably know quite a few, like, we're looking at Oracle, we're looking at SQL Server, but not a lot of people actually know that there is something else that actually exists, which is actually called MySQL, which is completely open source, completely customizable, and the best of all, it's completely free. Now, the advantages of MySQL is that it kind of integrates with any environment that you already might have or plan to kind of have in the near future, or probably in the next 2 to 3 years or the next 5 years. Why we use MSSQL is, for the core reason, is because it's kind of so flexible that we're looking at not just cost effectiveness, we're looking at actual customization options as well. So these are the kind of typical scenarios that you might probably come across when you're talking about database systems. And then we're actually coming to the backend for your content, which we actually called content management system. Now, traditional websites, if you go back about, say, 5 years ago, every time you want to create a website, you actually had to contact a developer who can actually kind of understand the code, program the code for you. You kind of have a look at it, ensure all the content over there is correct, and you kind of have FTP or SSH access to your servers, and you push the code. And then if there was a mistake or if there was a change that you would want to kind of put in, the only way that you had was to kind of go back to the